Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network, a division of the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network. The following program broadcast is an original creation by the broadcast entity. Discussion within the following broadcast should be used for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice or consultation. Before considering application of any broadcast content in the following program, please consult your healthcare provider. If you feel you are having a medical emergency, please contact your local health services for immediate assistance. MS&Me Media and the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network do not guarantee or warrant the accuracy of information in the broadcast to follow. The Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network provisions broadcast services to program hosts. Information discussed in the broadcast does not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or goals of the network and are solely those of the show broadcast host. Should you wish to host a broadcast, please visit our website at msmemedia.com and submit a request to become a program host. We thank you for listening to the MS&Me Radio Network. Enjoy the show.
Hi everyone, it's Rebecca Naylor, health coach with Chronically Well Club, celebrating 20 years in remission, living with multiple sclerosis, and creating Facebook video blogs and running this radio show to answer the question, how did you do it? And to share all the things I've learned over the past 20 years about lifestyle medicine, functional medicine, alternative healing modalities, and all the different things that are within your control to heal yourself naturally. So I wanted to talk a lot today about information overload. So that's going to be the topic for today. But to start with, just a quick review of what until last week I used to call my 8 keys of healing, but I've now expanded it to 9 because there was something that I was trying to squeeze into the other 8 keys because it was related to many of them, but I'm realizing now it really needs to be a focal point of its own. So the 9 keys, the 9 things that I consider that are within your ability to control to really fast forward your healing are, drumroll, diet, gut, toxics, environment, movement, cognition, emotions, community, and mindset. So for those of you who have been following my 8 keys, now 9 keys, the one that is new is community. And I took a while to decide whether I would call it community or communication, because really it's all related. It's all related. So I'll be talking more about that in future episodes. So for today, the topic is information overload. So I'll be talking a lot about how much information we let into our lives, from whom, how, and how we process that information and decide when enough is enough. I was talking about this idea with a dear friend just on Facebook, and she said, yeah, for sure, I agree. No news is good news. And I thought that was a great way to explain it, that sometimes no news is just better because there's just too much out there, too much information. So until this year, I was a high school teacher, 14 years as a public school educator, and I taught many, many different subjects. And one of the subjects that I taught was part of my role as a guidance counselor, and I taught a grade 10 course called Careers, Career Development. And it was actually one of my favorite courses to teach because it was really a half semester course devoted to figuring out who you are, what do you value, what do you stand for in your life, what do you want, who are you, what do you want to contribute, what do you want to give, how do you want to show up in this world. And one of the topics that we explored as part of that class is the changing workplace and the fact that a lot of our systems right now, our educational institutions, our healthcare system, all sorts of systems are really based on a sort of industrial revolution kind of era mindset of what life was like in the 1800s. And so there was this video that I used to show my class. You can search for it on YouTube. It's called Shift, SHIFT, Shift Happens. And I think they do a new one every year, and it's really looking at the changing role of the workplace and information out there and some of the challenges facing our millennials. And one of the statistics from that video that really stood out to me was this, that one Saturday issue of the New York Times contains more information than the average person would encounter in their entire lifetime in the 1800s. Isn't that crazy? So we're trying to digest all of this information as we become this global society. Think about it. It used to be that people lived in small tribes and villages, and, the news was what happened in your small little community or village. You did not know, nor were you in any way affected by what was going on across the world, never mind even in the next village. So we really are overwhelmed by information at this point in time. I started thinking about this a lot because yesterday there was another mass shooting in the United States. So I'm recording this here in Toronto, Canada. We still hear a lot of our news from what's happening in the United States because we are geographically tied to them, literally. We're on the same continent, and politically, economically, we're very attached to that country as well. So it's hard for us not to pay attention to what goes on in the United States. So yesterday, yet again, they had another mass shooting, and I don't watch the news. So I've been on a self-imposed sort of news strike it'll be a decade next year. I started in about 2008. When I just decided that my life was better served by not consciously taking time for the sheer purpose of ingesting information about what's going on in the world, because I don't feel it's necessary to stay informed. I have been an educator, a person who teaches about things that are going on in the world without reading the newspaper, really, for 10 years. Because you know what? You're going to find out about it. You're going to hear about it in the workroom. You're going to overhear people talking about it when you're having coffee. You're going to see mentions of it in people's social media feeds. It is impossible to avoid it. So even just day-to-day life, you get more than enough information just in passing to just be generally educated about what's going on in the world. So really, it's about, do you need the details? Do the details really help? So all I know about what happened yesterday is that it happened in Las Vegas, that it was some kind of music festival, that there was a gunman who opened fire, and there were more than 50 who died. So that's basically all I know. And I'm really feeling like that's enough. That's enough. Because it doesn't serve me to know the details. It doesn't serve me to know the exact injuries, or what kind of gun was used, or, how celebrities are responding. Like, this doesn't uplift my life in any way, and it doesn't help me to help. Because the reality is, I, as an individual living in Toronto, Canada, don't really have the ability to impact gun laws in the States. I can take individual actions, however, which will focus on spreading love in my world, that will focus on keeping my vibration high and being conscious of what I'm putting out into the world. Am I sharing in misery? Am I dwelling on the negative? Am I focusing on the awful things that are happening in the world, the climate disasters, the hurricanes, the shootings, the wars? Or am I focused on spreading love in my community? Because that is what I can do. And I truly believe that in order for there to be a global shift away from competition and horror and violence, it all starts with individual actions, individual choices to focus on love, to focus on asking ourselves on a daily basis. I often say this, what would love do? Every time you have to make a decision about who you talk to, what you listen to, what you focus on, you ask yourself, what would love do? And that's how you live your life. And imagine if every person did that, what the collective consciousness would become, right? Because every individual thought process, every individual action, we are all energetic beings and we influence each other. So if we make a decision to focus on love and not to focus on sensationalism, because that's what the media is, it's all about sensationalism. It's about, think about tabloids. I feel like regular newspapers are not even that far removed from tabloids now, because the headlines are written for the purpose of making everything seem catastrophically horrible, so that it sucks us in with this sort of addictive need, right? Like when you pass a car accident, it's human nature, curiosity to watch, even though you want to respect the privacy, of these people that have just had a car accident. You also kind of can't help this curiosity of wanting to know. And so it's tempting us. It's tempting that addiction by putting the headlines out there. Mass shooting, global destruction, just it makes us stress. It makes us lose our focus on our individual lives and be drawn into these dramas that are playing out on the global stage instead of focusing on love. That's all I want to say. That's all I want to say again and again. Focus on love, because this is what individually we can do to help globally, but it's also what we individually can do for our own health. Because we know, I say it again and again and again, our emotions are our health. Our emotions, our issues are in our tissues. Our issues are in our tissues. So if we're constantly focusing on stress and distraction and horror, how do you think that's showing up in your body, right? Adrenaline, cortisol, these awful things that are flowing through our bloodstream, and they're affecting our health. So I really do believe that there is a strong relationship between information overload, media saturation, and ill health and dis-ease, which is what disease is. So I challenge you to be a plague, to be a contagion of love, because emotions are contagious. And when you go out in the world, you can choose to go into your workplace and be like, oh my God, did you hear the latest horror? And you can buy into that sensationalist horror, or you can decide to be contagious love, to be contagious smile, to focus on what's good in the world and what's good in your heart and what's good in community, and just choose not to engage with the horror. I'm not talking about burying your head in the sand. I'm not talking about ignoring what's going on in the world, because it's there. We can't just pretend it's not happening, but we can acknowledge it. I acknowledge there was a mass shooting in the United States. I acknowledge that. I do what I do as an individual. I send my affirmative prayers, and I choose to be part of a shifting consciousness towards love, because that's what I can do as an individual. It's interesting that so much of the news we get these days is visual, right? It's not even like news trust. In the early 1900s, news was, think about the First World War, right? I'm also a history teacher. So in the First World War, news came via censored news reports, and it was just text. It was just ideas. And, then there was radio, and we started to hear about it. But then when there were wars, in the 50s, think the Korean War, Vietnam, these were the first wars that were television wars. These were first wars where there was actual footage, and the heroism and the glorification of the honor of the soldier started to be replaced by the horror of video and photography that really showed people the horrors of war. So I think about this a lot because it's not perfect, but I have a somewhat photographic memory. So when I see an image of something, I basically never forget it. Like right now, I can go through my photo albums in my head. I can literally go through individual photographs that I know are at home in my photo box, and I can enjoy my memories, because once I've seen those photos, they never disappear from my mind. Now I know some people have crazy photographic memories, like they can look at a page of a book and then recite every word. Mine is not quite that good. It's more just pictorial. And so think about, horror movies or commercials for horror movies, and they have those little flashes of, monsters and horrible, scary images that most people's brains just don't even quite register. I remember those images with vivid detail. So that's one of the other reasons why I choose not to have a television, why I choose not to engage with the news, because those horrible details stay with me forever, and they haunt me. I don't want them to be part of my life. So I'm very conscious of what visuals and what images I let into my life. I don't need to see the images to understand. I don't need to see a picture of dead bodies scattered around and people screaming in horror and people with tear-streaked faces to understand that there was a mass shooting yesterday. I get it. I get that it happened, and I don't need the horror. So that is something I choose not to bring into my life, because it's not even part of my world. It's a world away from me, and the knowledge that it happened is enough. So I encourage you to think about that, because images can be very negative, and it's not just about the media that we get from the news. It's also about the information, the sort of fictional information we get from television and stories. As I've been through this really big transition in the past month, changing my life from being a public high school teacher to not being a public high school teacher, because that's far too stressful for me and it's affecting my health, I've been challenged to find some ways for healthy escapism, because I don't watch TV. I don't have a television. I've never been interested in TV, even in grade school and high school when everybody was watching, music videos and stuff. I think I've seen like 3 music videos in my life. I've never really been big into TV. But as I've been too fatigued on some days because of my MS to read, which is my real passion, I have found myself kind of, borrowing my mom's password and logging into Netflix a bit. And there's a show that I've been watching really just because I love beautiful landscapes and I love horses. So I've been watching this Canadian TV show called Heartland, and I'd literally never even heard of it until a couple of weeks ago. Apparently it's been on for like 8 years. But I don't have a TV, so I didn't know about it. And I started watching it because I saw a picture of a horse. And at first I really liked it because there was a lot of beautiful scenery, which allowed me to, dwell on the beauty of nature. And, there's not a lot of horror and stressful situations in the show, or at least there weren't in the beginning when I first started watching it. I just focused on the beauty of the horses. But as I was doing a little bit of binge watching and getting in some later seasons, I started to realize it wasn't really about the horses anymore. It was becoming just like every other dramatic story. There were car accidents and plane crashes and shootings and all sorts of things. And I'm like, whoa, I just wanted to watch some people chill out with horses in a field. And suddenly I realized it was the same as every other show out there. Conflict, stress, violence, horror. I'm like, really? This almost Anne of Green Gables, innocent kid horse show where, the main characters don't even ever do anything but, kiss, even if they're married, because it's just so pure and family oriented and seemingly innocent. But all of a sudden we have all this horror again. So it really reminded me that story is based on conflict, right? So as a teacher, I also taught English and English as a second language. And when we're teaching the shape of a story, we literally teach that there's the introduction and there's the development and then there's a climax and a resolution. Those are the 4 main parts. But one thing that every story must have, every quote unquote good story, is stories must have a conflict. Supposedly, without a conflict, there's no story, because it's human nature to be drawn into conflict, to be drawn into the stress of other people. We are literally addicted to conflict. It's kind of crazy. So I made a decision that I'm tuning out of this Netflix thing because it's not good for my health. I started to find that, one of the characters in the show, her marriage is falling apart, and she just had this baby, and she's stressed out all the time, and the baby's sick all the time, and after I watch these episodes, I feel depressed and drained and stressed out. Like I'm taking on the stress of the characters. So I get that escapism can be a relief for people, but I'm choosing to try and find an escapism that serves me and that does not add stress to my life. Because Heartland, signing off. I'm not engaging in this anymore because you're adding stress to my life. So I'm looking for escapism by walking in nature and by reading positive news purposely. You know, there are actually news stations that are focused only on positive news stories. It's pretty awesome. You got to go to look for it though. So, you know, the internet is limitless, sorry. The internet is limitless. And so I wanted to also acknowledge that this too much information thing can be about health information as well. Because sometimes, how many of you out there feel like you just don't know what to trust anymore because you could spend your whole life researching what to do to improve your health and never have one clear consensus because everybody on the internet has an answer, and you know, one person tells you to eat butter, one person tells you not to eat butter, one person tells you to do cardio, another person tells you to focus on weights. You know, it's just for everything that you think you understand, there's somebody who disagrees, right? It's like the internet is just one big devil's advocate, you know, constant debate. And so you have to really limit yourself. You have to be a conscious consumer of information. You have to decide, who am I getting my news sources from? Who am I getting my information sources from when I'm doing my health research? Do I trust the source? And really try and limit your information. You know, find a few people, a few blogs, a few radio stations, a few news sources that you trust and that you believe in, and you've seen their credentials and you trust their experience, right? That they've lived it, that they've tried it, that they know what they're talking about, and focus on those people. Because really, you can never learn everything. And I find a lot of people who start to take the first steps to get control of their health start by getting stuck on the knowing and don't do enough of the doing. And that's me too, totally putting myself in that group too, because although, you know, I'm an educator and I'm trying to educate you, I'm also still learning. Life is a continuous process, and we teach what we need to learn. And what I need to learn is less knowing and more doing. So, you know, I've heard it said many times that you are the average of the 5 people with whom you spend the most time. And so I encourage you to question, who are the 5 people that you spend the most time? What do they talk about? What do they share? How do they influence you? Do they uplift you or do they bring you down? Because I'm being very conscious of the 5 people I spend the most time with. And I've really focused on a small number of people in my life who I'm finding inspiring, who are being accountable to each other, who are sort of forming what's called a mastermind. This is like a pretty popular term right now. Masterminding basically means finding a group of people, finding your peeps, finding people who are into what you're into, who are committed to sharing inspiration, to uplifting each other, to keeping each other accountable to your goals, and to not dragging each other down. Because so often we have friends where our friendships are actually based on gossiping or venting. And, you know, there are pros and cons of venting, but if all you ever do is vent, is it uplifting your life? Do you feel, after you've met with one of those 5 people you spend the most time with, do you feel uplifted, motivated, encouraged? Because that's what I'm really committed to feeling. So with this little mastermind group of people who I really value and cherish in my life right now, you know, we made a commitment to really focus in the month of October to supporting each other and doing the things that we need to do to make our lives better, to improve our health, our overall health, our mental health, physical health, spiritual health, social health, right? And so I just made some commitments to that group just today, actually. Some things that I want to do in my life to improve myself and therefore my health. So these are a couple things that I'm going to do. I'll share my goals with you. So number 1, since I'm no longer teaching and my day is not divided into scheduled periods, I'm finding, you know, self-directed time and time management is a challenge for me because it's so new. So I've made a commitment that I'm going to switch my showering in the evenings, apply my essential oils to really aid in a restful sleep. at night, so that then when I wake up in the morning, I can, as soon as I've walked my dog, get out of my PJs, get out of my pajamas, get dressed, get showered first thing in the morning, because I need to do that for myself to feel good and ready to face the day. Just because I don't have a quote unquote job to show up for at 9 a.m. anymore doesn't mean I don't want to start my day fresh and ready and feeling beautiful and energized and just ready for the world, right? As I said already, no more Netflix. So that's one of my goals. And I'm establishing a routine that I want to get out of the house for 2 uninterrupted hours per day, where I'm away from my puppy, which is like my baby right now. That can be a stress of its own. And just really focus on, doing the work on myself, the self-help, the personal growth and development. And number 5, I really want to take time to reintroduce into my life gratitude journaling, and written affirmative prayer, and doing this daily, because I find that just thinking about it and being like, yeah, I know what I want, it's not enough. I deserve the best. I deserve all of the good things that I encourage my clients to do. I deserve to take time to do them for myself. So I'm really committing, especially to that gratitude journaling. So instead of, getting stuck in front of Netflix and being stressed out by the characters' lives, I want to really take ownership of my time and how I'm spending my time, to be grateful for all of the things that I have in my life right now. So let's just take a moment right now. What am I grateful for? I am incredibly grateful for one of my best friends right now, Jen Green, who is such an amazing friend and teacher and support for me. We have very similar journeys, and I'm so grateful that our friendship, like just fast friends, we became such fast friends, and our friendship is entirely based on mutual support and inspiration and helping each other to live our best lives. And I so value having that kind of friendship in my life. So I want to give a shout out to Jen. Thank you so much. What else am I grateful for in my life? I'm grateful for the opportunity to take this time away from teaching and reevaluate how I want to recreate my life. I'm grateful for my family, for my mother who's supporting me and helping me to make good decisions during this time. I'm grateful for having access to the neuropsychiatrist that I'm working with, who's really helping me to make sense of the blurred line between the neurology of multiple sclerosis and the psychiatry of stress management, and how they're interacting in my life, and how I can use that knowledge to live better, to be healthier, to have less stress in my life. I'm very, very grateful for the time I'm spending with him, the care that he's offering to me, and how he's challenging me as well, because growth is about challenge. So those are a few things I am grateful for. And I'm going to wrap up for today by just saying that if you enjoyed this episode, then please check out my main website at chronicallywell.club. I'll be talking more about my 9 keys in future episodes. On my website, you can find links to my Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, my doTERRA essential oils work, and my works with Box Life neurostimulation products. So yeah, if you're interested in coaching or speaking, or you just want to connect, you can reach me also by email at rebecca@chronicallywell.club. So for now, everyone, create an amazing day and be well. I am going to do exactly that right now. Less knowing, more doing. Take care, everyone.